Welcome to the We Rise podcast, where we are building collective resilience. I'm your host, Christine Gouvet, business owner, wife, mother of two, paddleboarder, and I love working with communities across the nation. Join me as I share stories and strategies to inspire action to build resilience and community transformation. From the Navajo Nation to the mountains of Appalachia, incredible work is being done by community members and leaders. I'm excited to share more on the podcast today. Welcome. Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the We Rise podcast. We're really excited to share today some of the core stories that inspired the podcast initially around creating change from within, particularly around transformation from coal communities. There are some incredible stories and community leaders creating change across Central Appalachia and the nation and the globe, really in coal communities, that their stories are inspiring, and we are just so excited to share them out today. Welcome to episode 28 of the We Rise podcast. Change is often sparked by inspiration, seeing what others have done, especially in peer communities. People see that when someone looks like them or lives in a place like theirs, and they've created real, true, and lasting change that will allow their granddaughters and grandsons to thrive, they begin to imagine what might be possible in their own communities. No longer waiting for someone else to come and save them, they realize that they are the ones that they've been waiting for. But what creates that spark? What creates that inspiration? Learning through stories and examples, feeling a sense of agency and belonging, and getting fired up to kick ass creates that spark. At the same time, we have to recognize and grapple with the fact there are many challenges today facing communities in the United States and around the globe. Many communities are sinking, literally and figuratively. Support structures that have held communities in place for years are disappearing, from a tax base centered on fossil fuel production, to shorelines eroding, to the loss of younger generations who search for jobs or education away from their home place. Communities are changing at an unprecedented rate. New ways are needed to create life systems of support for communities and regions. Much of our work at our firm, Dialogue and Design Associates, is based in Central Appalachia, where the economy was built on coal mining and production in many places. But we've seen time and time again that communities are changing and that women are leading and transforming those communities, both in Appalachia and beyond. Community leaders, again, particularly women, need to hear about how others like them have created change both in mountain communities and around the globe, forging a path to resilience and to the future they want to see. They need to learn about the struggle that others have gone through, that going through the struggle itself yields the key to transformation. And that is so key. That is the struggle that we derive our strength from. It is hard, but it is so true and so real. We've seen it time and time again. Drawing from the lessons of ecological, economic, and social resilience, what truly builds community resilience is learning to grow and adapt from a shock. Not just recover or bounce back, but to bounce forward. Where communities have looked at what has and hasn't worked and to learn from those losses, they grow their capacity to come back stronger. This is how communities bounce forward. They create space to gather as a community, envision the future they want to create, and see what is working and what isn't, and then to work to make that vision a reality. But this cannot be learned in a vacuum, and it cannot be done alone. Inspiration for action comes through stories, through building connections where connections don't yet exist, and by building relationships, trust, and ultimately a transformed community. I've worked on a number of professional research projects, including regional and national scale studies of how to create a just transition or equitable change in communities based on new, local, and sustainable economies. And I've had many personal conversations and in-depth interviews with leaders throughout coal communities in Appalachia, the Midwest, and the West. All have pointed to the same need for local leaders to create change based on ideas from within their own communities. They are the ones who will create a more resilient and transformed future for their own communities. We are at a unique time in our history as COVID-19 collides with the collapse of the coal and fossil fuel industries. There has never been a more urgent time to share the ideas, strategies, and stories about how to build resilient communities, particularly those communities where the economy has been based on resource extraction. The effects of economic uncertainty, war, and COVID-19 and climate change underscore the need to build a more just and sustainable future. According to UNESCO, as cities manage their immediate response to COVID-19 and are looking ahead to plan and resource long-term recovery efforts, there is an opportunity to transform cities in meaningful ways that not only protect vulnerable people from immediate threats, but also build resilience for the looming climate crisis and other emergencies. We need to build upon this unique moment in time, not to go back to pre-COVID-19 business as usual, but to learn and grow in an intentional, networked, and systematic way that connects and rebuilds communities and regions for a regenerative future. Change is happening in some communities, and their elected officials, activists, and economic development professionals have many tools in their toolkits. Leaders in struggling communities need access to these resources. They need to see how other communities are reinventing themselves from the inside out as people come together to create change, building on the ideas and visions they share to make those ideas a reality. In a time of increasing polarization and conflict, community leaders need to hear how others have forged a path to resilience in what felt like impossible times and through insurmountable obstacles. To create change, people need to feel like they belong and they are part of a growing movement. They need to know that their voice matters and they have the inspiration, agency, and ability to transform their communities. They are the key to a resilient future. Though communities are facing economic and environmental crises, change is also happening. Many communities are creating positive growth despite the numerous odds against them. We need to hear the stories of communities that have relied on fossil fuels as their economic base to reimagine themselves. Communities that have provided the lifeblood for others with timber, coal, water, and other essentials are not sure what is next for them. They must often actively choose whether to grow anew or languish and fade. Communities whose economies are transitioning have been additionally challenged in recent years by an increasing sense of othering. In places where natural resource extraction drives the economy particularly, and elsewhere, communities have been intentionally maligned and ridiculed. People living in these communities feel a growing sense of isolation, of being singled out and siloed by those outside their communities. Community leaders are facing an increasing sense of despair as the effects of marginalization, diminishing economic prospects, COVID-19, and other challenges bear down on them. Particularly in resource extraction communities, many leaders experience the long-term effects of working in oil fields, mining coal, and living next to power plants. People have faced health issues for far too long, including black lung, asthma, and the sheer danger of the work, as well as systemic issues of environmental injustice, with the working poor and communities of color bearing the brunt of the ill effects of fossil fuel production. It is time for a significant federal investment in these communities and regions and to work towards a brighter future for all. Change begins to happen through cultivating a sense of belonging, growing resilience, sparking inspiration, and learning how to create transformation as individuals, communities, and regions. The We Rise podcast includes stories of people, particularly women, transforming their communities, such as Ivy Brashear of Mountain Association, who writes about how Appalachian women have been a source of community leadership, innovation, and resilience in a recent essay in 100 Days in Appalachia. Ivy writes, without generations of mountain women piecing and holding it all together, there might not have been people remaining in Appalachia to whom we can tell these stories. We'll include links to the show notes to everything we referenced today. Building collective resilience looks different in different places. Resilience means growing a stronger, brighter future for generations to come. It also takes many shapes and comes in different sizes. Resilience includes building community, a healthier environment, and robust local economies. It also means growing equity, inclusion, and belonging, care of self and others, and creating regeneration at all levels. What stories and strategies inspire you? Share your ideas with us on social media and check out our website at yeswerise.org to find the show notes, interview videos, and the links mentioned on the podcast today. Another amazing group working to change the narrative is the West Virginia Community Development Hub. The Hub recently shared about how their Redefine campaign, which uses research to disrupt stereotypes. Last year, the Hub produced the Redefine West Virginia campaign, a storytelling series highlighting community teams across the state who are redefining what it means to be a resident in the Mountain State. The series has reached more than 500,000 people, 500,000 people, y'all, and was proven to disrupt long-held negative stereotypes about West Virginia residents. These stories were rooted in Harmony Lab's research about national perceptions of how people can break intergenerational cycles of poverty. Over the course of the podcast, we've heard from guests whose work inspires and transforms, especially at the community level. This community-driven work is apparent in the towns of Southwest Virginia, where our firm Dialogue and Design has worked for over a decade. Here, a history of the declining coal industry has led to major shortfalls in the funding for municipal needs, infrastructure, and schools. Being resilient through the decline of the coal industry means creating new economic sectors and engines. It means looking at the impact on more than just direct workers, but entire communities. Resilience is about creating possibility and opportunity in communities that have consistently faced hardships and loss. Beyond these historic legacies, resilience in the small towns of Central Appalachia has been demonstrated through the creation of community-centered programs and a passion to create a place that past, current, and future generations are proud of. Community leaders in the Southwest Virginia towns of St. Paul, Dungannon, and Dayton want to create lasting change, and we're going to bring a few threads from past episodes to light to weave together this beautiful tapestry that's creating a new narrative in Southwest Virginia and real change. These towns have created change by working together, and they've been acting on the amenity their towns had to offer. These 3 towns demonstrate that sustainable change is rooted locally, with community groups and leaders being the advocates for their own lives and being the best advocates for their own lives. To hear these inspiring leaders share their stories, check out some of our previous episodes, which we'll link to in the show notes. You'll hear about St. Paul, Virginia. Louanne Wallace is from Southwest Virginia and has spent over 20 years focused on empowering the region to thrive as a community and economically. Lou talks about how communities over time have wanted the government, coal companies, or corporate business to be the catalyst for change. But she has noted that that has not worked and has worked for a different way, one grounded in community autonomy. Louanne said in our conversation that as our culture has shifted towards big business and the corporate economy, there's been a loss of entrepreneurs and small business owners. This trend is changing now, though, as Louanne and many others work to help communities revitalize downtowns. This requires dedication, planning, and a willingness to fail but keep trying. It's important, Lou says, to find the folks within a community that have the desire, vision, and bandwidth to bring about change. Louanne says that creating a flourishing community means capitalizing on the assets of the community. For towns like St. Paul and Dayton, this means utilizing natural assets, rivers, mountains, and outdoor recreation as a means for economic growth, along with other regional towns like Cleveland and Dungannon. Louanne says it's not written down in a plan anywhere, but along the way, when you start seeing successes happen, things come out of other things and they grow. Growth happens because of other growth, and we love this conversation with Louanne so much. Not far down the road in Dungannon, Virginia, Mayor Horn shares how community members have joined to revitalize Dungannon, often through working regionally, creating safe and beautiful spaces for youth, and pursuing growth through networking. Now, Mayor Horn is one of the absolute inspiration points for the podcast, and she is an amazing leader. Coming up against struggles and hardship, Dungannon has shown resilience and perseverance in creating new opportunities and generating the support they need to transform their town. The community around and supporting Mayor Horn and her team have been a core component to keeping the vision alive for Dungannon. Mayor Horn's leadership team feels the same drive to create change and see growth happen in their town as other towns, noting that even the smallest changes add up. Mayor Horn draws inspiration from watching the revitalization of other towns, such as in Dayton with the new playground, seeing Cleveland's first campground, and St. Paul's new hotel and the Sugar Hill Brewery. They all give her hope as she continues her important work in Dungannon. An advocate for networking, Mayor Horn understands the importance of connecting with other towns, listening to stories of resilience, and tapping into the information highway, as she calls it, to gain tools and resources. Mayor Horn says, I feel like we're growing and we're going to keep growing. We've got a good group of people in here that work together now, and we all get involved together. If we're out cleaning, we're all down there cleaning. I think I just get excited thinking of what it's going to be eventually when we get more businesses in. I think Dungannon and the people are going to see the growth of it, and what's happened has made a difference in their lives, but mostly in the children's lives, because they have a place to look forward to and a future to look forward to. Ooh, Mayor Horn always gives me goosebumps because what she's saying is so visibly true when you visit Dungannon. It's such a beautiful place. And in Dayton in Southwest Virginia, Pat and Kat have a passion for revitalizing the community-oriented town of Dayton and are a stellar example of the optimism it takes to rekindle the past for the youth of tomorrow, finding hope in other successes and the value of community, which you can also learn more about in an earlier episode. Pat and Kat have observed other towns in Southwest Virginia creating something new and beautiful and flourishing as a result. One hope that Pat has is to revitalize the train tracks in town to bring more tourists to the area. She envisions families riding into Dayton, hiking and exploring the area, and then continuing on and viewing the views of beautiful waterfalls and the mountains. Kat and Pat say it would be something fun for folks of all ages, from the Spearhead recreation trails coming in from St. Paul to the waterfalls of Cleveland and the Clinch River running through all these communities. Dayton offers variety and beauty for anyone to enjoy, and it's part of what brings hope to Kat and Pat for the future of the town. They draw their inspiration from the surrounding communities who have been through the process they are going through. They say the work is hard, and at times motivation may fizzle out, but it's important to keep pushing through to make their vision for Dayton a reality. Going to other towns and attending their meetings has also been helpful in providing support and resources and tools they did not know were available to them, including grants. Kat says, I think you really have to have a vision that you want things to improve. And if you don't have that vision and keep pushing, it's very easy to get aggravated and give up. And saying, been there, done that. But it's harder, it seems like, to get people interested. But they come and do things for a while and they kind of fizzle out and they don't come back and they think it's helpless. But you have to keep going on. And people in Dayton have done that. St. Paul is a prime example of that, Kat says. They've really pushed hard and done a tremendous job, and things have really picked up in St. Paul. There's a new nice hotel, a brewery, a nice restaurant, other shops that have popped in. And it's a really nice place. I'm hoping we can do that in our area. And Pat adds, my advice to others would be get involved with other communities, help them, and then hopefully they'll come back and help us. The more you give, the more you get. That's my slogan. I love that. So true. So true. The more you give, the more you get. We really love sharing the stories of community leaders like those in St. Paul, Dungannon, and Dayton who are forging a new path towards creating resilience and true transformation. One person at a time, one community at a time, one region at a time, the quilt of transformation can grow piece by piece until resilience becomes the norm instead of the exception. Because together we rise. We want to give a special shout out of thanks to leaders in each of these communities for sharing their stories, and to Leah Taylor of Dialogue and Design for her help in developing this episode. We hope you enjoy. Again, check out the show notes for links to everything we referenced today. Subscribe, share it with others, and leave us a rating review. Hope you have a great day, all. Thank you for joining the We Rise podcast. To learn more about the stories and speakers featured in this episode, check out our website at yeswerise.org. You'll find the show notes, interview videos, the links mentioned today, and you can join our email list. Subscribe to the show to catch every new episode and leave us a review or a rating. You can also find us on Facebook or Instagram at Collective Resilience We Rise to share your ideas. The Collective Resilience We Rise podcast is produced by Dialogue and Design Associates, podcasting for creatives with music by Drishti Beats. Thanks so much for listening.